Yeah, a few of you already saw online. I'm getting rid of everything. I'm just kidding, I'm not like getting rid of everything, I'm just doing a big swap on stuff. So you may remember me saying in some past videos that each year, or maybe a couple times a year, I kind of evaluate all the gear that I have, and I think about whether I have the right gear that I need, whether I think I should change some gear. I evaluate because I think it's important to always evaluate. The problem is, over the last year, I've changed gear a lot, and I've come to the realization that I've changed gear so much, and now I have so much gear, that it's kind of made me a little lazier with the way that I shoot. So this is part of like hoping that that changes. So recently I was listening to a podcast with some photographers, and they were talking about gear, and they were talking about just different lenses and just different gear talk like they always talk about. And one of the things that the girl brought up is the fact that they love primes because it makes you kind of think more creatively of how to get the shot with the lens you have, rather than kind of getting in a lazy mindset of, if I have all my focal ranges covered, well, I can just carry one lens or two lenses and then just zoom in and zoom out. And yet what I realized is that's kind of how I've always looked at all my gear. I look at all my gear as I want to be able to cover every single focal length top to bottom. But then what I realized is the look that I'm getting on each one of those focal lengths is not as good as it could be, because when they're not fixed focal primes, they're not as high of an aperture, or I should say low of an aperture, and so it doesn't necessarily get me the same look as I would get from the primes anyway. And you see, I've always known all this kind of stuff. The problem is, with the GH5s, when I first switched to them, I went to obviously common lenses like the 35 to 100, which is a 70 to 200 equivalent, and I went to a 24 to 70 equivalent in the 12 to 35, and they're great, like they work great at f2.8, which for the most part, it's usable. It looks good, it works good, it covers the whole range. The problem is, I haven't been happy with like the look of some of the things that I'm trying to do when it comes to certain commercial work, or even certain things with the vlog or certain sit down videos. I want a little bit more out of my lenses, and these just aren't cutting it. I decided to switch things up. And then, as you know, or maybe you don't know if this is the first time visiting this channel, but just recently I went ahead and purchased the Sony a7 III. Really an incredible camera, I think, for the price point. I did a whole review on that. I'll link that here, or probably forget it. Just a great overall camera. My main purpose with this camera was to have something that had really good autofocus, and to have something that had a headphone jack that I could basically hand to a behind the scenes shooter. $2,000 plus the lens, which ended up being like $3,000 total, for a BTS camera that I only use a couple times a year, and a camera that I can't really use for like vlogging because it doesn't have a flip screen. It just seemed like I didn't really think that through very good. I'm gonna get rid of it. I thought about using this as, you know, my main camera to track the bride coming down the aisle and all that, because that worked great for the autofocus, but I missed a bunch of shots at a recent wedding because I forgot about the 30-minute record limit that I was so used to not having anymore, the GH5s. So that really annoyed me, and so I'm gonna get rid of the a7 III too. You see, I think back to when I first got into wedding filmmaking and cinematography and all that stuff, I didn't have very much. I had like one camera and two lenses, and I got the job done. I mean, was it as good as what I think I do now? Of course not. I wouldn't expect that. But my skill level has gotten better. It doesn't mean that all the equipment that I have is 100% necessary, and I'm trying to get better at that side of things. See, when I first started video production, it was always my thought that you'd want to have every focal length covered, because then you'd never be in a situation that you like can't handle. But then I realized more and more that I use the same lenses all the time, and it's just easier to have one lens on as much as possible. And I'd rather get the look that I really want from the one lens that I use, and then just adjust accordingly. And then in the rare time that it doesn't work for a situation, I can just switch to another prime lens. I know this all is like pretty common, and it's something that I've even had. I used to be on all primes when I had Canon, and then I think over the years, as I started to do more and more different types of projects, I started to think that it would be more beneficial to have more zoom lenses in my bag because I'd be able to cover different distances. I've been fortunate over the year to have like a bunch of different type of camera bodies and setups and lenses, and I've had kind of all the lenses that I've ever wanted, but I really want to get better at actually being more creative with the lenses I have and figuring out the right lens for the right situation, and not just thinking to myself, well, I don't know what situation that I'm going into, so I'd rather just have one lens that covers it all. The biggest limiting factor with the Micro Four Thirds system, as many of you know, is that it's harder to get depth of field with Micro Four Thirds, and that's a given, and that's something that you kind of knew going in, and I kind of knew going in. But then I discovered, and I'm realizing more and more, that it is possible to get the kind of depth of field I'm looking for in certain situations. I just don't have the right lenses for it. Now, by no means do I want to say that depth of field is everything, because it honestly isn't, but there are so many times, especially in an interview situation, that depth of field I think is very important, because when you really want to separate your subject from the background, when you really want to make sure that the main focus of someone's eyes as they're watching a piece of content is you or the person in front of the camera, it's really important to be able to have that depth of field, because you really want to make sure that they can focus on what you want them to focus on. And that's what I'm doing. So I'm selling every single lens I have, and I'm going to a whole different set. I will tell you what that whole set is once I actually get all the lenses. One of them comes tomorrow, so I'm excited to show you that first one and kind of explain a little bit more about how I use them. But I'm switching my whole entire setup and only going to 5 lenses total. Now that may still sound like a lot, but remember that I have 3 camera bodies. So on a wedding ceremony or some sort of wedding event, I use 3 cameras at once, so I don't have that many lenses compared to the bodies. I chose 5 that I think are great focal lengths, and I'm gonna make those work. I think it's important to get better at utilizing what you have rather than always thinking you need everything, which I'm really guilty of. I'm trying to inspire and trying to get better even on this channel alone of being able to help you understand that you don't need as much gear as honestly as I have most times. I'm trying to tell myself that more, and as I get more and more inspired by so many of you that watch this channel and so many people that vlog or so many people doing incredible things with such a little amount of gear, it's really inspired me lately to be like, you don't need as much as you have. You can create good things with what you have and stop trying to keep buying more and more. It's not getting you anything. Molly, what can I help you with? Also, a lot of you have actually, oddly enough, asked what kind of dog this is. She's actually a soft coat Wheaten Terrier. She's an amazing dog. If you're looking to get a dog, she's awesome. She's not very big, and she's super friendly. She doesn't shed. She's just an awesome dog. Well, really busy overall day. I had 6 meetings today, which is way more meetings than I normally have, and definitely way more meetings than I prefer to have, but sometimes you gotta do what you gotta do. Anyway, wrapping up the day, hopefully this was somewhat helpful to you, kind of my thought process behind sometimes having a lot of gear is not necessarily the best thing. So, and I'm trying to get better at not needing the gear either, and really trying to utilize more efficiently what I do have to create the best product I can. And it makes me realize more often that sometimes that's actually the best way to do it, to not overcrowd your brain with what lens, with what this, with what audio, but just keep it simple and focus more on the story and more on the composition, the lighting. Focus on those things and it will make you a better cinematographer, which is ultimately what we're all trying to do. So thanks for watching. See ya.